Okay, so today we will start with a new chapter in civics, chapter number 3, constitutional design. Any idea what is a constitution?
Ma'am, a set of rules
Okay, a set of rules. Anyone else?
that should be abided
That
by.
should be followed by the
Ma'am, a set of rules
The
and laws
citizens of India.
that all citizens
uh,
agree upon on being
citizens
following.
of their own country. मतलब इंडिया में सिर्फ नहीं होगा।
All right.
Ma'am, all
Ma'am,
citizens agree upon.
Mm-hmm.
the citizens of their countries.
Okay, so a set of rules that the citizens agree on and they have to be followed by all in the country. Is
All.
that?
Yes,
Okay, so that is
and
what.
are agreeable upon by all citizens.
Okay.
Followed by the government.
Okay, it is according to what governments should work.
Very important.
All right,
No, ma'am, citizens
citizens.
whole democracy.
Means all the citizens as well as the governments, they have to follow the rules and regulations which are mentioned in the constitution. So it is not only the common people that have to follow it, but even the governments. So is the constitution
Political bodies.
so is the constitution above the governments or not? What do you think?
No, ma'am,
Yes,
it is.
Huh?
ma'am.
Everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, it is equal.
Ma'am, but the government can amend it.
They can amend it, but obviously not all provisions can be amended.
Yes,
The
Ma'am,
basic
unwritten.
huh,
Ma'am,
the
some are flexible and some are flexible and some are written.
hmm, like
Laws
the
all.
the basic structure of a constitution, that cannot be amended. Otherwise means the ideals on which the constitution is based on, that cannot be amended, but otherwise amendments can be made in the rules and laws. All right. Okay, so let's start now. In the last chapter, if you remember, we noticed that in a democracy, the people, once they are elected, they cannot do as they like and they have to follow certain rules and regulations, and the citizens also have to abide by them, and all these rules together, they are called as the constitution. So the constitution, we can say, is the supreme, the highest law of the country, and the constitution, it determines that what would be the rights of the citizens, what would be the powers of the governments, how the governments would function, what would be the relationship between the citizens and the governments, and so forth. Okay, so in this chapter we will be dealing with some questions like what is the constitutional design of our country, then what is the need of a constitution, and how a constitution is made, who makes the constitution, and what way is followed in making a constitution, and what are the values that help in shaping of the constitution. So, and when once the constitution is accepted, can we later on make changes in it as required by the changing conditions or the changing society? So all that we will deal in this chapter. Now, I have already sent you the revised social studies syllabus. So, according to that, the first topic here in this chapter, that is the democratic constitution in South Africa. This certain section is not in your course, but it is from 3.2, that why do we need a constitution, from there we have in your course. But the problem is that if you don't do this, then you will not be able to do section 3.2. All right, so we will start with here only, and in brief, not in detail, in brief we will see that what happened in this section, because the second section is related to this one only. All right, all of you.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this chapter starts with a story, and the story is from South Africa, and we have a small speech given by Nelson Mandela. Have you heard the name of Nelson Mandela before?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And uh, someone read out his speech. Who will read out?
Ma'am, Dhruv.
Is Dhruv? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, Dhruv.
Wonderful.
Okay, Dhruv, come on.
I have fought against white domination which I ought to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, if it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
All right. So in this particular speech, Nelson Mandela is talking about the domination of the whites in South Africa, and he is saying that he is ready to fight, even give up his life for what he wants to achieve. All right. And so now this speech he gave when he was tried for treason. What is treason?
Betrayal of one's own country.
All right. Okay.
one's own country.
All right. So he was being tried for treason, means betrayal of his own country by the South African white South African government, and he and 7 others, they were sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964. Why? Because he opposed the apartheid regime in his country, and he spent the next 28 years in South Africa's most dreaded prison, that is Robben Islands. Now, what is apartheid? Apartheid was a, yes,
But
and
discrimination on the basis of color, like
Yes,
white
okay, so discrimination,
South African.
so
the Americans.
this was specific to or special to South Africa, this name
Why?
apartheid.
Yes,
All right, all right, so it
white
was a
ruler.
system of racial discrimination, and very special to South Africa, and it was based on color also. And now what happened, during the 17th and the 18th century, the trading companies from Europe, they occupied so many colonies throughout the world by force. All right, and just like the way they occupied India, so in the same manner they made colonies elsewhere in the world also. But unlike India, a large number of whites came and settled in South Africa, and they became the local rulers. In India, though we had the British rule here, but a large number of Britishers did not come and settle here. But the case in South Africa was different, and so a large number of whites, they came and settled here, and they divided the people on the basis of color. Now the native peoples of South Africa, they are black in color, as we know, and they made about 75% of the population, and they were called as blacks. And besides the black and the whites, there were other groups which were called as the mixed races, or those who were called as colored. Like Indians also fall in the colored category. For the whites, the Indians also fall in the colored category, and so the white rulers, they mistreated all the non-whites. All right, so all the non-whites were mistreated, and they were termed as inferiors and treated as inferiors, and the non-whites also did not have any voting rights. Then this apartheid system was oppressive more for the blacks, and they were forbidden to live in the areas where whites were living, and they could not even work in the areas where white lives unless they had a permit, and all the other things, services like trains, buses, taxis, hotels, hospitals, schools, and everything, they were separate for the blacks and whites, and this is called as segregation, means different things for different people. So the bus which was used for black, uh, obviously the whites did not enter it, and that was the condition. So everything, the churches and everything, even the blacks, they could not visit the churches in which the whites used to go. And so the blacks, they started to protest against it, and they started to form their organizations and associations because of such exploitation and bad treatment which was given to them. And so since 1950, the blacks, the coloreds, and the Indians, they all got together against the apartheid system, and they launched strikes and protest marches. And the African National Congress, it was the main organization that led this freedom struggle. In India, which was the main organization which led the freedom struggle? Yes?
Ma'am, INC,
Uh,
Indian
full form.
Indian National,
All right. In
Indian National
Indian National Congress, and in South Africa it was the African National Congress. All right. So many other people also joined in, many workers union and communist parties, and many whites also, they also came and joined the African National Congress to oppose the apartheid. And many other countries also they denounced apartheid, and they said that this was unjust and it should be stopped. But the white racist government, they continued to rule, and they detained people, tortured and killed so many of blacks and coloreds. But protests and struggles, the cycle continued. The people protested and striked, and again there was repression on oppression, so the cycle continued. And the governments, they finally realized that they could not any longer keep the blacks under their rule through this oppression and repression. And so the white regime, or the white rule, they changed their policies. And first, all these discriminatory laws, means the laws which ill treated, did not treat the blacks and the whites equally, they were repealed, they were removed. And the ban on the political parties, they were also lifted. And after 28 years of imprisonment, Nelson Mandela, he walked out of jail as a free man. And then finally, at the midnight of 26th April 1994, the national flag of Republic of South Africa, it was unfurled, and a new democracy was born in the world. And the apartheid government, it came to an end, and in place of that, a multiracial government, it appeared, and it formed the government. Now, how all this came about? And so we again have a small speech by Nelson Mandela, who was the first president. Now we will not do this, but what happened now? After the new democratic South Africa was born, so the black leaders, they appealed to the blacks, to their fellow blacks, to forgive the white. The blacks had been treated really badly. Now when this country was getting freedom, so obviously everything was not well. And now the whites were afraid that what will the blacks do to them, and they were afraid that maybe they will treat them the same way that they have treated the blacks. And the blacks, obviously, they wanted now rule in this and equal rights in this new country. And so the black leaders, they asked their fellow blacks to forgive the whites, and they said that let us together build a new South Africa, which was based on equality of all races and equality of men and women also, and which will have justice and equality and freedom and human rights for all the people living in the country. And so the party, means here we are talking about the whites, and they they have ruled through oppression and they have killed so many people. They and the other party, means the blacks, those who had been oppressed for so long, both of them together sat to make a new constitution for their country. And so they discussed and deliberated, and after 2 years they came out with one of the finest, best constitutions the world ever has had. And this constitution, it gives extensive many rights to their citizens, and together the oppressor and the oppressed, they decided that they will search solutions for the problems of their countries, and they thought that nobody should be removed or excluded from this. Though they have oppressed them, but still they agreed that all should come together, sit together and find solution for the problems of their country. And now the constitution that came up, they came up with, it inspires the democrats all over the world. And the state which was denounced by many countries in the world as undemocratic is now seen as a model of democracy. Understood till here?
Yes.
Everything? Okay.
Yes.
Alright, so till here it was not in your course, but you needed to know the story so that we can move forward. Now we'll move on with why do we need a constitution? Okay, any idea why do we need a constitution?
Ma'am, we
To
need a
prevent the tyranny of the majority,
Okay, anyone else?
to prevent the
Domination
domination of the
of the?
To
majority and the minority.
Okay, domination of the. Alright,
peace also.
okay, for the maintenance of peace.
can function properly.
Okay, so that it can function properly.
Ma'am, to save the country from
Okay, what are intra-community rights? Any idea?
Ma'am, ma'am, between ma'am
Yes, from the
one
Ma'am,
one
between
community
caste
and
or other one religion or
ma'am, between any
yes, ma'am,
two or more
and
communities.
yes, ma'am.
That is intra or that is inter?
Ma'am, inter community.
That is inter.
Inter-community.
That is inter community. What is intra community?
Ma'am, between one's own community.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, within single community, that will be intra.
yes,
All right, and rules are required for all organizations, even for a single class also. Now we are not having a proper classes in school, but then still we needed a timetable, right? Because without this timetable there will be so much chaos. You will know which teacher will come and teach, and even the teachers will not know that in which class and section they will have to teach. So a basic framework or a format, certain rules regulations are required for the working of each and every body, organization or institution. And so if it is required for a smaller bodies, then obviously much more for such a big country like ours. Okay, now the South African example, they are saying that it is a very good way to understand that why we need a constitution, and then what basically is the work of a constitution. Now if you remember, the oppressor and the oppressed, both they were planning to live together. It was not that the oppressors will not now be removed from the country and only the oppressed, means the white would be removed and only the blacks will live. Now it was not that. What they planned was that both will live together, but that was not going to easy. You say, okay, we forgive for all that you have done, but still the bitterness, the hurt, what they have lost, it will be there. So it was not going to be easy for them to trust each other, and both the communities, they had their fears, and each wanted that their welfare should be safeguarded in this new country. Now the black majority, they were very sure that they didn't wanted the majority principle to be compromised, and they also wanted good enough substantial social and economic rights. They wanted good enough rights for them which had not been granted to them till now. And the white majority, they were also afraid, and they wanted that their privileges and their property which they already had were owning, it should not be taken away from them. And so both the parties, they sat together and they discussed, they had negotiations, and finally they came to a compromise that the whites, they agreed that okay, we can have the principle of majority rule, and the principle of one person one vote. And they also said, okay, some basic rights should be given to the poor and the workers and the marginalized sections of the society. And the blacks, they also agreed that the majority rule will not be absolute, and they will not take away the property of the whites. But though they compromised, but this compromise was not easy. Now how will this compromise be implemented? And even if we think that they will be able to trust each other, now what was the guarantee that this trust will not be broken in future? Now the only way left was that they write down certain rules, and then both parties, they abide by them, then only something could be done. And now these rules, basically they lay down that how the rulers would be chosen in future, then what would be the powers of this new chosen governments, what they can do, what they cannot do, what would be the rights of the citizens in this new country. And one more thing was very important, that all these rules will work only till the time when the winning government was not able to change them very easily. Because if the governments, they came in power and they had the power to change the constitution or the rules easily, then obviously any government who will come to power, they will change it for their own good, and then again the same problem will arise. So means whatever rules and regulations were made, now they could not be easily changed. That also needs to be there. And then it also had to be agreed on that these rules would be supreme, and no government should be able to ignore them. Now, this set of basic rules and regulations is called as a constitution. Now, this constitution making, we did the story of South Africa, so it did not mean that it was only special to them or unique to them, but every country and every group of people, they have their own constitution. And now in different countries, the relationship between the people may not have been so bad as the case was there in South Africa, but all over the world, there's so much diversity. In our country also, there's so much diversity. People have so many different interests and so many different opinions about a single thing. And so basically, whether the countries are democratic or whether they are not democratic, but every country, they need to have some basic rules. Now, this also does not mean that only the governments, they have to have some basic rules and regulations. Now, any association, like I gave you the example of school, so any association, any organization, all the bodies need to have their own constitution. Now, whether it could be a club in your area, a cooperative society, or even a political party, all of them need a constitution of their own. So, to conclude, we can say that what is a constitution? It is a set of written rules which are accepted by all the people, all the citizens living in that country. It is the highest law, and this law will determine the relationship between the citizens and also the relationship between the people and the government. So, let's see what are the functions of constitution. First, it generates a degree of trust and coordination. Means the different kind of people, there were so many, like in South Africa, there were the blacks and the whites and the coloreds, so they should have a degree of trust and also coordination, so they can stay together. Then constitution, it also tells that how the government will be elected, how many people would be there, what would be the powers and the functions of the government. Then all this is there in the constitution. Then third point, the constitution, it also lays down that what would be the powers of the government and what would be the rights of the citizens in that country. And lastly, it also expresses the aspirations, means what you aspire from your country, what you want from your country, all right, for your welfare. So it also expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good, a harmonious, a welfare society. Now, all countries having constitution, it is not bound that they would be democratic, but all democratic countries surely will have constitutions. And after the 13 American colonies, they got freedom from Great Britain, they gave themselves the constitution. And you studied the French Revolution also, that after the revolution, the French people also gave themselves a democratic constitution. And since then, it has been a practice in all democracies to have a written constitution. Okay, understood till now, all of you? Okay, so we did 4 functions of the democracy. Just
Yes, sir.
tell me what is the first function? Who will tell me that? First function of democracy. I think you have your books in your hand. Okay, Parth.
Yes, ma'am.
Parth, come on. What is the first function? Okay, you simply read it out, huh? I wanted it in your own words. Okay, second, who will tell? Is Prabhat in the class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, Prabhat. Beta, what is the second function?
Ma'am, second, it specifies how the government will be constituted.
Constituted, what does this mean? How the government will be constituted means how the government will be formed. All right. Okay, then continue. And
How will have power to take decisions? Ma'am, who will be have power to take decisions?
okay, Prabhat, are you able to understand what is being taught?
Yes.
Were you listening carefully? Okay, that's nice. Then third, who will tell me the third function? Hurry up. Where's Adya?
I'm in the class.
Yes, Adya, come on. Third. Hmm. Hurry up. All right. So, like we did in the last chapter, that once the government is elected, they cannot do as they wish. So, they have to work according to the rules of the constitution. So, there are certain limits which are there on the powers of the government, and this is also mentioned in the constitution. And then also the rights. You know, we have so many fundamental rights, constitutional rights given to us by the constitution. So, all this is there in the constitution. And the last one, come on, let me see who's there in the class. Who will answer? Yes, where's Kshitij?
Ma'am, Vipul.
Yes, Kshitij.
Ma'am, ma'am, it lays down certain rules and regulations so that there is peace and the people live in harmony, and
And
ma'am, so they create a good society. They do not fight with each other. So ma'am, it lays certain limitations for the people. So
it
so that they
expresses,
have no.
it also expresses the aspiration. You know, all of us aspire, like you studying in class 9th, and you all must be having so many aspirations, ambitions, goal. All right. So the constitution also tells what would be the goals, the aspirations of the people from their country. Okay. So understood, all of you?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think so we will stop here for today's class.